Welcome everybody to the first episode of the 2026 season with Tifosi Confidential. I'm your host, Nico. Here with me always, Luca. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm awake.
Yeah.
Having this race at 5 o'clock in the morning was kind of difficult with the Italian time zone, but it's always nice to see a race in Australia, and this was a very nice race indeed.
Yes.
So I try not to fall asleep.
We started the year with fireworks. We have our coffee ready. It's gonna be a shorter episode, but it might feel longer given our tiredness.
Probably, but I will try not to bore you to death.
We'll definitely try not to.
Or put you to sleep.
Exactly. But we can't start anywhere else other than this incredible Mercedes garage that brought out two spaceships on track.
Yeah, I think spaceship is the right word. The problem is that by June they will be outlawed, at least in this configuration. But for what we have seen all over the weekend, they are they are along with Ferrari, because Ferrari did extremely well as well. But Mercedes is again one step up. Which, to be honest, it doesn't really surprise me. I mean, again, this is very early, and we know there is a certain configuration which will be changed. But if you think about it, all the restart with the new rules since 2013, Mercedes came out on top, and they proved to do this. They did this also this time around, which is kind of interesting, scary if you think about it. But that's what they did.
Yeah, I think also specifically every time a great attention is given to the engine side of things. Like you said, in 2013, 2014, with the new hybrid era, now it's looking like they found the right mixture of ingredients for the battery and the thermal unit to have them working together extremely well. Again, their interpretation of the rules, which, to be fair, they obviously, when you're developing a new engine, you're always in contact with the FIA.
Of course.
So they were allowed to do it like this, and then all the politics that you know better than any other person on this podcast, for sure.
Well, what is interesting is that trying to find a loophole is what Formula One is all about. So there's nothing wrong there. What is kind of peculiar, not the first time that happens in Formula One, is that the Mercedes did find a loophole. It works. The FIA is, of course, aware of it because Mercedes informed them all, every step that they took. The fact is, again, which is what it is peculiar, is that the FIA said this will not work in the long run, so use it for the next 3 months and then take it away.
Yeah.
Which kind of reminds me what happened what potentially happened in 1978 with the famous fan that Gordon Murray had come up with the Brabham Alfa Romeo with the fan. Niki Lauda won in Sweden, and then basically the FIA said, okay, we're going to keep it for the next 2 months, and then we're going to take it away. Then I guess better judgment prevailed, and they kind of took it away right away. But this to say that there's nothing new in this decision. But I think, going back to your point, and going back to one of my talking point, is the way that Toto Wolff leads this team, which is it's an excellent. It's probably the best team manager, team leader, team whatever there is Formula One today. I mean,
Part owner as well.
Yes, but what I'm saying is the environment that Toto was able to create at Mercedes, it works, especially when creativity is concerned. And so, chapeau.
Chapeau. P1 for George Russell, P2 for Kimi. Not bad.
Not bad.
Nice seeing an Italian slowly getting closer to that first step on the podium, which I personally think he's going to get this season.
Oh, he will. I'm sure he will. I mean, certainly by June.
Certainly by June. We have 6 more races, depending also on the calendar configuration with
That's
all
right.
that's going on in geopolitics. We're gonna see how that develops. So we might have 24 races or 22 races this season.
Which is still a lot.
And by the way, the two races in questions are in this first, let's call it, stint of the season.
Mm-hmm.
So if they're gonna skip these two races, which are Bahrain and Saudi Arabia, if they're gonna skip these two races, that's also two less races that Mercedes can use this engine in.
Unless Toto who is very skilled in diplomacy, is able to convince the FIA that since they had allowed him to race 8 races with this configuration,
Carry it over.
Carried over 2 more, maybe 1 more compromise. I don't know. I mean, wouldn't be surprised, and probably, given the whole thing, would actually be fair.
Yeah.
So anyway, but
Yeah. I think in regards to this race, I also like to notice how Kimi had a very bad start,
yeah,
but he stayed composed nonetheless, was there fighting for the win at the end, but was also in the mix with the Ferraris before the whole pit stop. So great job by Kimi. Finished only 3 seconds behind George. And then third place, Charles.
yeah.
Finally got the podium he was missing.
Well, Ferrari is there. I mean, but if you look at the results, they are like 15 seconds. The 2 Ferrari drivers are 15 seconds behind the 2 Mercedes drivers. And then to find the 5th place, you have to go like 50 seconds.
Yep.
And then after the 6th, you actually find 1 lap. What I'm saying is that Ferrari, did not do as well as Mercedes, but without finding apparently any loophole, they were able to come up with the second best overall car of this beginning of the season, which is actually much better that Ferrari did in the last each and every time that there were new rules and new starts of the regulations.
Yeah. And again, I hate bringing all the speculation when we talk about Formula One, but it is important, especially in this era. So, Ferrari did a great job, and there's not, you can only expect positive developments. They don't have any rule changes affecting them or anything.
I agree also because, as you're saying, we don't know, maybe between now and June, Mercedes will come up with something which, knowing them, will probably make the car even better and the engine even better than what it is today. But if they don't, Ferrari's right there.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, like, you could actually have this scenario for which, Mercedes, is it's highly competitive until June, and then maybe they drop in performance, and Ferrari, will be steady, at the second. It is the second force of the championship right now, and if Mercedes drops, they could become number 1. And then if you look at the results and the point that will be able to make it, there you could have Ferrari as a world title contender.
Yeah, let's hope so. In fact, the drivers had very different reactions to the race.
Yeah,
Charles was a bit sadder. He wasn't that satisfied.
This is kind of interesting if you think about it, because let's not. Mercedes, they had a universally shared, reaction to the race. Okay, and then of course they have one contender for the world title, which is George Russell. Ferrari has potentially 2. What is interesting is that for how happy Lewis was finally with the car and with himself, Charles was not.
And Charles was the one on the podium.
Exactly, because he placed 3rd. So what is interesting is, probably there are 2 different perspectives within the team or within the minds of the 2 drivers. Mm-hmm. But it's kind of interesting because, Ferrari did extremely well. Yeah. Yet one driver is not pleased, is not happy.
Yeah. I would also think that perhaps looking at where they started, particularly Lewis, considering last season, Lewis's main goal right now is, obviously the championship is what they all race for. But Lewis wants a car where he can prove he's still Sir Lewis Hamilton. Because at the end of last year, how it went, let alone the sprint race in China and all that, Lewis did very little to nothing in a Ferrari. And so I think Lewis sees this opportunity, a car this competitive, again, only 16 seconds from the lead, which is still a lot, but you know, there's a big question mark on the future of Mercedes with that engine. And Ferrari looks overall stable. And as a fact, if they perhaps didn't mess up the strategy with the virtual safety car, not calling them in the pits, well, Ferrari was up there with the cars,
Yeah.
with the Mercedes. And we saw how hard it is to actually pull away from the other drivers.
So that's a good point. You know, both your outlook on the judgment that Lewis gave, but also you touched the strategy thing. You know, Lewis, of course, for as pleased as he was at the end, did complain during the race, and I think he was correct that at least one of the two drivers should have stopped, which is interesting. You know, there are no papaya rules in at Ferrari, but there is a rule that you need to win. And normally, whenever there is no certainty, and certainly there isn't any or much certainties at the beginning of the season, probably they could have gone with two different strategies. I mean, in the end, they were third and fourth. So what I'm saying is nobody can really complain. But eventually, Ferrari's result could have been even better.
Yeah. And I think it's also important to notice how Australia is one of, let's say, one of the top 5 or 4 most engine-dependent tracks.
Oh, yeah.
You know, Australia, Jeddah, Saudi Arabia,
Yeah.
Monza, Austria, Spielberg. You know, they are very, you know, if you have a very good engine, you're, as we saw, 8 tenths ahead in qualifying for Mercedes, which
Totally.
didn't necessarily translate to 8 tenths in a race.
Yeah.
It was much less. But, you know, it was a bit of an outlier, this Grand Prix. So
Yeah.
we'll see in China how the situation can potentially change. But I do think that, and you'll probably agree with me, Mercedes, Ferrari, clear 1 and 2.
Oh yeah, totally.
Clear in 1 and 2.
Totally, but that's the beauty of the beginning of the season. Every season, you know, like you have the first few races with different track configurations. So you know, potentially what happened in Australia may not necessarily be repeated this coming weekend in China, but because you need to assess all the variables tied to all the tracks. But I agree with you. I mean, like you know, Mercedes is number one force in the championship. Ferrari is number 2, and then you have Max.
You have Max, you have Lando, but it's not quite clear the McLaren, Red Bull, how they're pairing up in terms of strength. But Lando did get a P5, kept Max behind for the final part of the race. And these were the last 2 drivers to not be lapped by Mercedes.
Which is exactly what is interesting, because if you think about it, the last races of last year, they were all like, you know, almost like you had 10 drivers in like half a second.
Yeah.
In qualifying, you know, now here the gap was larger, and as you know, there were 6 cars that did not finish the race, which is probably like an all-time record for the last 25 years.
And 2 didn't even start.
Exactly. So this is something already different from last year and the years before, and the fact that you know only 6 cars finished within the same lap. Everybody else was at least 1 lap behind.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And the incoming world champion, both Lando and McLaren, just able to get a P5 51 seconds off the lead. It is also important to say, you know, while we're also discussing the Mercedes engine, that Mercedes gives the engine also to other teams like McLaren, Alpine, Williams, and they don't do as good of a job with the whole package as Mercedes does.
Yeah.
So they've also found a right balance with the aerodynamics and the whole chassis. Engine aside, McLaren still got some issues in pace, I guess. We don't really know the full extent of the car because, as you said, Oscar didn't even start the race.
Yeah.
So we don't have that second data. And the same goes for the Red Bull, as Hajar had an engine issue on lap 11. But this is more understandable, I think, considering it's a brand new Ford engine. First time they build it in-house at Red Bull. So there's all those little learning curves that we've seen also with Audi, for instance,
Oh yeah.
with Hülkenberg not being able to start. We had Bottas with Cadillac. All the new teams, newcomers, will eventually experience.
They will. I mean, the big question
Setbacks.
is how long will it take for them?
Yeah.
You know, and probably different teams with different issues will take different times to adjust. Of course, when you are like Audi and you buy a team, so you already have a starting point, things are easier. You know, when you're Cadillac and you're basically starting from scratch, that's going to be difficult. It's going to be really difficult. You know, they were 3 laps behind. Again, I think the key will be to see how fast they adjust, how fast they get used to this new environment, and how fast they come up with the same solutions as everybody else. But you know, in Formula One, everything, you know, not only the cars are fast, you know, the engineers are really fast in adapting, in reshaping, in readjusting. So what I'm saying is, like, you know, in a few races, I think we will have the right scope of the year, and we'll probably be able to assess the strength of each team. Of course, nobody, I think, can expect Cadillac to be competitive for the World Championship this year, or even probably for a race. But you know, these are large organizations, and by the way, it's very good that from 20 we went up to 22 cars. That's good for the show. It's good for the sports.
Yeah. Yeah. And then looking downwards, let's say uh, in the arriving order, we have Ollie Behrman, P7 with a Haas.
Yeah.
Quite impressive, and may I say even more impressive, the only rookie of this season, Arvid Lindblad, P8.
Well, you know, Ollie, we know him from last year and the year before. He's good, he's solid, he's growing fast. Lindblad was really interesting because also watching qualifying, he did extremely well. I mean, he's adjusting extremely quickly.
Yeah.
I was totally surprised, you know, in a pleasant way, by his performance in qualifying and also in the race, which is good. It's good for Formula One.
Yeah. And then we have also another youngster who was a rookie last year, Gabriel Bortoleto. He brings Audi its first 2 points.
Which is
in
no
your
small
era.
achievement, not only for Bortoleto, but for Audi. Again, Audi did buy Sauber, so they start with a vantage point. But you know, scoring the first time out, first race out, is certainly good for the morale.
And scoring with your engine produced
Which is great.
in-house.
I mean, that's probably the reason that made them the most happy.
Yeah.
The fact that, you know, this engine proved to be competitive. But you know, again, you know, they may be newcomers to Formula One, and of course, Formula One is a whole different thing from anything else. But we're talking about an incredibly good car manufacturer, which has been involved with success in other forms of racing for forever, for so long. So yeah, it is surprising. In a way, yes. In another way, not necessarily, because that's how they were talking about.
Yeah. Final driver in the points, Pierre Gasly.
Yeah,
First point for Alpine, which is already better than
last year.
last year.
That's good.
That's already a step forward. And then as we go down the order, everybody been lapped. Some like Colapinto or Sainz more than
More than
once.
once. Yeah.
But nothing really stands out. I think it's unfortunate seeing Williams this low.
Yeah, this was a negative surprise.
I had high hopes for them.
Especially after last year,
Yeah.
they did it very well. Yes.
Yeah.
Also sorry for Sainz, but who did a great season last year.
Yeah.
But again, this is the first race of the season, new regular, new rules, all this like pauses and the performance and the need to wait and go slow, and which made for very interesting first few laps. It was
Yeah.
like a total madness at one point. Lewis being down 3 seconds, and then 2 turns later is already there
Yeah.
fighting for the leadership. It's probably crazy. It won't last for the whole race, but the pace was incredibly fast, and the way they went around was kind of in a constructive way. It was total madness.
Yeah, definitely a lot. They were also learning a lot in those first few laps how the other teams were approaching the race, because you can do all the race pace simulations and free practice and testing, but once you're in a Grand Prix, that's where you see everybody's cards for the first time,
Yeah.
and it's in their full power.
I mean, and there've been so many issues in this preseason. Very limited testing, but a lot of issues.
Yeah,
Also, the way they would start, and everything went basically well. I mean, there were no real problems, but there were a lot of concerns from what had emerged from the development of the cars over the winter and the first testing. So, in the end, I guess Formula One won.
yeah. And then, of course, honorable mention has to go to Aston Martin. They did more laps than anybody expected, maybe than even the drivers expected. However, the end result was always going to be retiring the car. They've been saying it even before the race, trying to save parts for the development of the car. And what can we do? Is this the start of the last season for Alonso?
I don't know. I mean, I can't even say he gets better with age because he was already very good when he was 20 years old. But in a way, it could be if the car becomes really competitive. I don't know why you should actually quit, to be honest. Maybe somebody else in the team should, but finally give up. No, but it's interesting that Aston Martin, in the end, was able to do more than they expected.
Yeah,
There was a lot of talk the week before the race that Aston would have liked to sit out of this race the way you could do in the old days, just to stay home and not necessarily test because you can't test anymore, but at least work on the car without exposing yourself to the risk of failure in front of everybody. But of course, with these rules and this contracts with the sponsors, you're just gonna do that. So they were actually brave enough to come to Australia and practice and qualify and race, and I think they did it better than they expected. Then of course they have the real genius of this Formula One, who is Rory Byrne. So I know they will do well, but I think they should be satisfied with what they achieved this weekend, despite the premises.
okay, very nice. Now, for our final segment of this episode, are we satisfied with the new Formula One? Do you have any positives, some negatives? What did you get from this weekend?
Well, first of all, I was happy because after 3 months, I really wanted to see some Formula One. Then I've been watching Formula One since 1973, so it's kind of like I almost needed like oxygen, I guess. It's good for my breathing. And I've been very, very critical of, and I think with some reasons, of the latest developments, at least over the last 10 years. And I'm still not convinced that this configuration of the engine, with the fact that you need to stop and pause and wait, and which could actually be dangerous, despite all the lights warning the drivers, and also the fact that all this overtaking, with the boosts and the other one waiting at the very beginning, it was, I called it madness. It's a beautiful madness, of course, and as long as the drivers are happy to do this, it's fine by me. but it was kind of different to see, like all this, like, gaps, widening and then shortening without real reason if you think about it. But again, like every time, every single year in Formula One, we will get used to this, of course, and it will seem normal. And in the end, it's probably the beauty of this discipline. It's always something new, and if you're a real fan, a core fan, um, you get used to it, and you be just as interested as before.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I think with that, we can say goodbye to Australia, make our way over a few lands, few bridges of water,
Yeah,
and
looking
we head straight to China.
straight to China next weekend, which is great. I mean, I know I've been very critical of 24 races, which may actually be 22 because of what happened in the Middle East right now. The way too many, but from a fan's point of view, it's great. I mean, like, there's already another Grand Prix next weekend, and this is fun.
This is fun. It is, it will be, and we will be here to talk about it with you, give you our
What
views.
time is China?
I guess we have to break out the sunglasses again.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
Okay, good.
yeah. So we'll see you next week, and Forza Ferrari.
Always.